Hello, and welcome back, Evelings. It has been a long time, 6 or 7 months to be precise. I went through some stuff, I didn't play Eve for a little bit, but then, you know how Eve is, you get reeled back in, like a fish on a space hook. So, today I've got some new content for you that I've been working on. This is what I'm going to call my Null Yeeter episode of Exploration Ships. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the builds that I use when I yeet myself out into null-sec in one of these things. Now, what do I mean when I say yeet? Let me just access my cargo hold. So these Needlejack filaments. Now, a filament in Eve is a little teleportation device, essentially, that you can activate. And when you do, it warps your ship into a random place, usually. In the case of these Noise 5 Needlejack filaments, which is what we're going to be mostly talking about today, they will warp you to a random null-sec system that is relatively empty and quiet, which is odd because they're called noise, but whatever. So we'll talk about those in a second, and then we'll talk about the border filaments and the Devana filaments. So the goal of these builds with these three ships is to get yourself out in a null-sec and explore your way around until you're ready to be done, and then get yourself back safely to Dodexi or Jita or wherever you want to go. And at the end, we're going to have a little dive into Pyfa. If you've never used Pyfa, it's short for, I believe it's short for Python Fitting Assistant. It's basically just a souped up version of the Eve thing. It's got a lot of benefits to it, and I'll show you what those are in a second. But let me explain. I'm going to use the Anathema first. The Anathema is my go-to ship for yeeting myself out into null-sec. Why? A couple reasons. It's got 4 mid slots, which is really important to be able to fit a Microwarpdrive, Data Analyzer, Relic Analyzer, and a cargo scanner, which is just so nice to have. So you can see what's inside the things you're trying to hack when you get into the various sites out there. And with only 3 mids, you can only fit 3 of these things in. And my goal here is to be very ISK efficient, right? I tried to build these so that you spend the little amount as possible and get the most gain out of it, and still have it be very functional. So the Anathema is a Covert Ops ship. And the bonuses give you core and combat scanner probe strength, so you can scan stuff down easier. And the deviation, which means the little thing you're trying to track down scoots around a little bit less than if you didn't have that. And then 10 plus or plus 10 bonus to Relic and Data Analyzer virus strength. And you can fit a Covert Ops cloak, which is kind of important. And your cloak reactivation delay is reduced to 5 seconds, which isn't a huge deal. The thing about the Anathema is that because its Covert Ops bonuses are really necessary to scan stuff down really well, it's kind of, you have to skill into this thing in order to use it. But once you do, this is my go-to ship, not anything but the MR one. And here's the reason why. You'll notice that I've jacked up my explosive resistances almost as high as I can in certain cases. And the reason for this is that there's really only one danger when you're exploring in null if you're doing it right. And that is when you run into covert research facilities, what they call ghost sites. In the ghost sites, there are these hackable cans that have oodles of loot inside, like the best loot you can get outside of like the really hard sleeper caches and stuff, which you're not going to try to do. Promise me you won't try. That's not really what this build is for. But if you come across one of these covert research facilities in this build, in all these builds I'm going to show you, you can actually try to do them. And the odds of you dying are very, very, very low. So we'll talk about that in a second. Let me go through the build from the tops, from the highs to the mids to the lows to the rigs. You'll notice that I actually can't use this build. I've been running it with the Sisters Core Probe Launcher, but this thing's 25 million ISK. If you just train up to the Core Probe Launcher 2, like I should have done years ago, you can save yourself a bunch of money. And it's not quite as good as the Sisters Core Probe, but it's like 25 times less expensive. So just do that. So let's go through this. So Covert Ops cloaking device, if you're going to run a Covert Ops ship, you might as well have this. You can cloak up and move at your normal velocity without any penalty at all. I know this says 0% maximum velocity modifier. It makes it maybe seem like you can't move, like you're 0%. But what it means is there's no deficit to your movement. You can't run your Microwarpdrive, but you can move at whatever, 331 meters per second while you're cloaked, which is really good for getting out of sticky situations. You can also warp while cloaked when you're using the Covert Ops cloaking device, which is the most important. We'll talk about that in a second. Shadow Ultimatum jerks keep killing our stuff. Anyway, I just shot the video, and I forgot a couple of important things. So while you can do stuff with the Magnate, it can't fit the Covert Ops cloaking device, which allows you to do warp cloaked, which I mentioned, but the reason that's important is because not only are you just way stealthier that way, but also the ghost sites that we're really interested in getting the tasty loot from have a timer where a bunch of bad guys show up. The timer starts when you warp to the site and you aren't cloaked. So when you have the Covert Ops cloak and you are cloaked and you warp to the site, the timer doesn't start until you uncloak in the site. Now, this can save you anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds to 15 seconds, depending on the length of the warp. And so, you know, it's just a lot better to be able to Covert Ops your way in there. Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to stick this in the video, but when it goes in, that's when it goes in. And now back to your regularly scheduled video where I know what I'm talking about for sure. The Core Probe Launcher 2, so you can scan stuff down as best you can, right? And to use with that, I always do the Sisters Core Scanner probes. Sisters Core Scanner probe. I can almost even say it. They're not super duper mega expensive, and they're really, really good. I always run 16, even though the launcher can only hold 8, because then when you launch your first 8, your next 8 automatically reload. It just saves you a few clicks, and for another 2.4 million ISK, it's worth my time, and the fact that I don't have to think about putting the probes back in my launcher before I rescan. It's just a little more efficient. You should always run 16, in my opinion. You can get away with 8. So this would be about 5 million of the build is just in the scanner probe, so you could actually make this be about 29 mil if you just used regular scanners. It might be a lot harder to get those level 4 sites. We are not going for level 5 scans in this thing. The only thing you find in level 5 scans is like nasty superior sleeper caches, which you're not going to run. You just don't want to mess around with that stuff. This is for level 1, 2, 3, and 4 data and relic sites. And you can do limited sleeper caches in it as well, because if you pilot correctly in those, you won't take any damage and you can get all the stuff that's in there. Okay, so those are the highs. Core Probe Launcher 2, Covert Ops Cloaking Device 2. The mids consist of a 5nm cold gas enduring Microwarpdrive, because why not? We don't need the compact because we can fit everything. The enduring just saves us a little bit of capacitor. Data Analyzer 2, Relic Analyzer 2. I think to go into null, you really kind of need to be up in the 2s here. You could probably do it with the 1s. It's just going to be a little dicey, and you're not going to get as much stuff in. It's going to take you longer to hack, and that's dangerous. The shorter it takes you, the better off you are. And then Type E Enduring Cargo Scanner, so you can see what's inside the nodes so that you don't waste your time on nodes that have like 1 carbon in them. We all know the nodes that I'm talking about. So, you know, if you're in somebody else's null-sec, you might as well just be a jerk and only take the cans that are worth something and leave them to clean up the garbage. If you're in your own null-sec and you're doing this and you're by your buddies, just don't do it. Just hack everything. You don't need to know what's in it. Don't clean out the expensive cans and leave the garbage for your friends. It's just not polite. The lows consist of a 200mm steel plates. This is where all of our tank is coming from. 200mm steel plates, and a couple of these true Sansha explosive energized membranes. Now, there's one skill that you're going to need to train up. It won't take too long. It's the explosive armor compensation skill, which really makes these things a lot better. If you don't have it, you can get to level 3 pretty quick. I think I have it at level 4. You might be able to get away with it at 3. I haven't checked the numbers like that, but you're going to have to check them, and I'll teach you how to do that in Pyfa. So the reason I take explosive is because the ghost sites, when the cans blow up, meaning if you fail a hack or if the bad guys show up and blow the cans up, you take strictly explosive damage. And in null, it's 9,000 explosive damage. So you have to be able to tank 9,000 explosive damage. That's the goal of this entire thing. That way you can do the ghost sites and not wet your pants. You don't have to worry too much about it. You can stop hacking in the middle of the can right when the bad guys show up. It blows up and you're on your way out. Like you'll have like 100 hit points, but it's okay. All right, you can just go cloak up somewhere and chill out. You can only get through one covert site that way though, because once your armor is bashed down to nothing and your structure's bashed down to nothing, it kind of is going to end your run anyway. But at least you're alive and you have all the other stuff you collected. So the micro auxiliary power core 1 will make it so this will all fit. The small Memetic algorithm bank 2 is, I really like this. You can go down to a 1 here, but there's really no point. The 2 fits nicely in there, and it raises your virus coherence bonus by 20. So your virus coherence for data sites, I believe, is going to be 20 stronger. Not the strength, but the life total of your data analyzer. So all the covert sites are data sites, and this will help you out when you're trying to hack like the limited sleeper caches and whatever as well. It's just really nice to have that extra hit points, extra little cushion, so you can screw up a couple more times and not, you know, not pay the price. Small explosive armor reinforcer 1 helps push us over the cap so that we can get those explosions. In the cargo, we take a couple of Noise 5 Needlejack filaments. These are the ones that can they can port up to 5 fleet members, but you're only going to use it for yourself because you don't want to share the loot with anybody. That's just, you know, not good. So these will port you out into null-sec, and then when you're done exploring around, you're going to use one of these Border 5 Pochven filaments. All right, these guys here will put you into a border system of Pochven. Now, Pochven is a little area that got created a few years ago. It's basically its own little, almost wormhole type space. And a border system, Pochven has like a hub system, and it's got some little outer ones, and it's got the border ones. The border ones are, you know, nowhere in Pochven is particularly safe, but the border ones are probably a little bit safer. This will warp you to one of those. You just literally cloak up and sit there for 15 minutes until you can use your Glorification 1 Devana filament. Now this thing warps you into an Edencom system. A Triglavian Minor Victory system. I believe all of these are either high-sec or low-sec. So you can work your way back into high-sec very easily that way. If you're going to try to get all the way back from wherever you yeeted yourself into null, you're going to die on the way more than likely. But a lot of times you'll end up in high-sec or you'll end up in low-sec with these guys. And that's the easiest way out of null and back home, so you don't die. They're not that expensive, really. So that is the build for the Anathema. This one is my favorite covert ops for this type of activity. Just because of it's got really high armor hit points and it's got really good base explosive resistance. It's got a good slot layout, and everything about the Anathema is just great. So this is the one I recommend if you want to try starting this out. Now, let me show you Pyfa really quick. This is the Pyfa program here. Okay. You can copy this to clipboard if you want to check. Like you can import my fit or whatever. I'll put them in the description, and you can see the fits in there. But if you want to check it for yourself, you go into Pyfa. Let me delete this because I don't really care. And then you can say fit from clipboard, and it'll copy that fit right in here. Where is this? Null Yeeter. So there it is, and you'll put it in here. Now, what you need to check is you need to go up to this. Whoopsie doodles. You need to go up to this little thing and go to generic and go to explosive. This is what it simulates taking just explosive damage. You need to get your effective HP up to over 9k, and then you will survive a blast. Now, you can import your character. There's mine, Alelia. You can import your character to make sure that your skills, because if I put it on all 5, then I'm even better, right? I'm at 9.6k, but I don't have all 5. I have the skills I have, you know what I'm saying? So I can get to 9.11k with this build here for, 26 million or whatever. What does it say? 34 million. That will allow me to survive an explosion with a whopping 113 hit points. So that's plenty. And then you can check all kinds of other stuff in Pyfa too, but that's the most important thing. If you're not hitting this 9k mark, then you will blow up in a ghost site if you fail a hack on one of the cans. And that's just, you don't have to do the ghost sites, but the thing about this build is to do the regular relic and data sites, you really don't need all that much. You need like these things, and you need your mids basically. Your mids are going to be the same no matter what. And so all these bottoms don't do anything. You just fit a bunch of tanks so you can survive the explosion. Let's talk about the other ship. This is actually possible to do in a Magnate. You lose a couple things with the Magnate. This build is 17 mil. You could get this cheaper too, probably. I'm not much cheaper though. In order to do this, you actually have to fit an active tank. So when you're going into the place, into a covert site, you got to turn these puppies on, and then when you're hacking, you have to actually overheat one of them, because that's the only way I can get this up, even with all 5 skills. The only way I can get this to survive the explosion is to overheat one of your hardeners. Make sure it cycles once before you start like trying to hack or whatever. And you only have a little while in this too. The capacitor will only hold out for like a minute 20 if you leave everything on and cycling. All right, you got to. This isn't as good at the covert sites. You can get all kinds of other stuff done in this. One thing you're missing is the this cargo scanner, so you're just gonna have to hack everything. It's still got the small emission sharpener, and it needs the ancillary current router to be able to fit the 400 plate. This thing can fit a huge plate. It's got a lot more fitting space than the covert ops. The other thing you lose out on in this is this only warps at 5 AU, and the Anathema warps at 8 AU, which is just gross, disgustingly fast. So you can get all over the place and stuff like that. But this is about half as expensive, and you can get some work done in the Magnate. If you want to go the expensive route, and this is actually not very skill heavy, is the thing about the Astero. Now the Astero build is expensive, 126, right? It does basically the same thing as the Anathema. You're a little bit faster, 2600 versus 2000, so you can get around a little bit faster within the sites if you have to drive all over the place. I even put a hyperspatial on it, but you can, fit it however you want a little bit. But again, you can get these true Sansha things going on down here and some big old plates, and you can just go to town. You can also have flighted drones on this in case you get caught by somebody. You shouldn't get caught by people though. Like there's no reason you should get caught. You're really fast. You're really cloaky. Just pay attention. But this does have some Hornet EC300s, which the Anathema cannot have, and the Magnate actually can have, which is weird that the Anathema doesn't get drones. But whatever, it doesn't get drones. It's like they filled the drone bay with cheddar or something. Whatever. But the Anathema, the Astero is a really cool build as well, but it's very similar. Like it does basically the same thing, but it's not as skill reliant. So you don't really need the Galente frigate bonus at all. 20% to drone hit points, who cares? The Amar frigate bonus you do kind of need. So if you're kind of an Amar frigate guy or gal, 4% bonus to all armor resistances. You got to check in PIFO with your skills if you need more tank down here. You can kind of cut and build how you want it. But you automatically have the maximum core and combat probe scanner strength thing, 100% reduction in cloaking device CPU, and all the other bonuses without having really any skills. Whereas the covert ops, you actually need some skills in order to fly it. The Astero is like super expensive, but you don't need a bunch of skills, and it's a really awesome ship anyways. But you got to be careful with it. It's 125 mil. Don't go flying it into any crazy places. But if you tank it properly against explosive damage, you have very little to worry about, at least in your first ghost site, should you stumble upon one. So that is how I think you should yeet yourself into null, and then you can scan and hack your way back to Jita, or scan and hack your way around null until you're sick of it, and then just filament your way into Pochven, and then filament your way out of Pochven into a Triglavian Minor Victory system. And you can kind of show info on these to see how they work. It's kind of self-explanatory, and it's the best way back that I've found. Probably the safest way back. Just make sure when you're in Pochven that you're cloaked up, because they will find you and they will kill you. It is very dangerous in Pochven. And then these are the fits that I think you should use in null-sec. And as always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments. I'll put these builds in the descriptions. Feel free to change them up. Make sure you check them in PyFile with your own character. Import your character from character. Import character file. You'll figure it out. You're a smart Eve and you know what you're doing. Okay, so that's all I got for you today. Be good. I hope you enjoyed watching. Please like, subscribe. Please like and subscribe and all that other stuff. Thank you so much. And one more thing. I know I said that this fit has on the Magnate has the emission sharpener, but that's nonsense. It needs the Memetic algorithm bank, just like all the other fits. So I don't know what I was thinking. It should have this. Bye.